He is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He joins us now live from Tel Aviv. A lot to get to, Jonathan. First, let's talk about this imminent ballistic missile attack threat poised against Israel from Iran. This, according to a Western source with knowledge, telling our colleague Barak Ravid that unlike the April attack, where we had seen 300 projectiles launched from Iran, the vast majority of them intercepted. They included ballistic missiles, but also drones and cruise missiles. What Barak Ravid is reporting, per his sources, is that Iran is now strategically focusing on just launching ballistic missiles. The message is that they will be impacting Israel at a much faster rate and time, giving Israelis very limited time to seek shelter. How are you interpreting this? And more importantly, how is the Israeli government interpreting this?
Yeah, good evening. I just came up from the bomb shelter myself. Not Iranian missiles yet, but missiles or long-range rockets fired from Lebanon at central Israel. So there's incoming from various directions. Sadly, nothing new for Israeli civilians in the north, center, and south. Regarding Iran, I think that they themselves draw conclusions from their failed attempt on the 13th and 14th of April, when they fired about 300 projectiles towards Israel. 99% were successfully intercepted. And of course, Iran wants to prevent or doesn't want to do a repeat of their previous failure. It's correct what your previous guest spoke about, the need for an international coalition and how important it is. I don't know if Israel will be able to uphold the same frankly, amazing standards of intercepting incoming missiles that we did the last time, and maybe there will be more casualties in Israel. But I think this really opens up a totally new set of possibilities and options for Israel when it comes to defending itself and tackling the number one source of instability, violence, and terrorism in the Middle East, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran. And by Iran firing at Israel, they are opening up those gates, and I'm sure that the Israeli Air Force and other components of the Israeli armed forces are ready and prepped for it.
Following the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, the U.S. had been warning Iran over the last several days that a direct attack on Israel would see a response from Israel much larger in scale than what Israel did when they responded to Iran's attack back in April, and that included a targeted strike against an air defense facility in Isfahan. Can you lay out some of the options that Israel may now seek if, in fact, we do see ballistic missiles targeted at Israel imminently?
Yeah, you know, one of the biggest strategic importance of Hezbollah in terms of the Iranian perspective was that Hezbollah were the main deterrent that the Iranians were using against Israel from launching a preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. Their illicit nuclear facilities, which they are building against international condemnations, and they continue to do so as the war unfolds in the Middle East. And Hezbollah was supposed to be the main stopgap against that. We've seen that even though Hassan Nasrallah has been eliminated and most of the chain of command has been eliminated, and Hezbollah has tried to fire, we haven't seen a lot of very significant fire from Hezbollah, so there's less deterrent there. Why do I speak about that? Because I think that we are definitely in the ballpark of Israel assessing the situation together with the U.S. and with other countries, but first and foremost with the U.S., and looking at a very vast range of targets, military targets in Iran. They go from dual-purpose targets like the port of Bandar Abbas or the island of Kharj, where the Iranian regime exports oil and petrochemical products, and of course lots and lots of military facilities, specifically the Revolutionary Guard and the Quds Force, which are responsible for most of the havoc and terrorism in the Middle East. And I wouldn't put seats of government and whereabouts of the Iranian leaders out of bounds. This really, when I say in my previous answer, I said that Iran is really opening up a very wide range of possibilities. I mean exactly so. And Israel has a lot of tools now at its disposal. I still, and with this I'll end, I think it is very odd that the Iranians continue to do what they do and engage Israel directly. And I'm not sure that this will play out for the better for Iran in the long term.
There have been many in the Israeli government and many Israelis, former government officials, military officials that have been long saying that it is time to once and for all target Iran's nuclear program and some of its facilities. Obviously, that would be a very complicated strike and mission to engage on. But is this giving Israel the opportunity, perhaps an opening to do that? And is this a risk that you think Israel is prepared to take?
I am really amazed.
I'd say a short answer, probably yes, but it depends on a few other components as well. It is extremely important to be part of a coalition against Iran and not to be fighting by ourselves. And I think that American leadership in this is absolutely crucial. Israel and the U.S. have to be very synchronized and coordinated, as well as they were coordinated on the 13th and 14th of April in the defensive operations. Israel and America should have clear strategic objectives when it comes to stopping Iran's malign activities in the region. And the nuclear program is one part, but the regime is another part. And even if the nuclear facilities are struck, then the Iranian regime will still have the ability to rebuild them. And I wouldn't want to go into too much detail about how that can happen. I'm just saying that we are looking at, Israel has prepared this for quite some time. Israel has, I think, quite a substantial database of targets and is updating them. And I think Israel has displayed over the last year that it has the ability to penetrate hardened targets, whether it is Hezbollah or Iran, and to deliver precise munitions when they need to go. And I think that should be worrying the Iranians now, as it appears as if they have made the decision to fire at Israel and to escalate the situation here. That should worry the Iranians, and I think that we are in for the coming days will be extremely turbulent, and I think that they will be strategic in the full sense of the word, and maybe bring about substantial change in the Middle East.
You mentioned Israel not being able to go this alone, and the significance of having a coalition, first and foremost, the support of the United States. We've already established that the U.S. has assets in the region. Defense Minister Gallant has just spoken once again with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, his counterpart in the United States. But in terms of some of the risks Israel is willing to take, it doesn't appear that the U.S. is on the same page. On the one hand, perhaps the Biden administration is taking a step back and not wanting to withhold Israel too much, given the sensitivity about the upcoming election. But the same thing can be applied to how far the United States is willing to take, not just in defense of an ally, but perhaps fighting alongside an ally if Israel doesn't, in fact, decide that this is time to strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. How much of has Israel, as the government, factored that into their calculation?
I think that has been really at the top of communications and meetings between highly appointed defense officials and also elected officials. I think that Israel and the U.S. share a similar, if not identical, understanding of the threat and what Iran means for the region, how bad Iranian influence is. And I agree with you that there are differences of opinion, I think, between how the two countries assess what needs to be done. Israel, to be blunt, has much more skin in the game because it is Israel that is the subject of Iranian attacks, and as such, probably Israel would want to do more in order to safeguard itself and make sure that nights like tonight and the night of the 13th and 14th of April don't ever happen again. I think that Israel last time was a very disciplined and I would say loyal and responsible ally to the U.S. The U.S. didn't want Israel to retaliate in significant force against Iran last time, And after deliberations were made, that is what Israel did. Israel refrained from doing what it really wanted to do and prioritized continuing fighting in Gaza, going for Hamas in Rafah, and didn't deliver a significant blow. I don't think we will see a repeat of that scenario. I think that now, if Iran, and I think Barak Ravid's report that you referenced earlier, stands on solid ground, I think that the Iranians will fire more and worse than what they did last time. And as such, Israel will respond accordingly. And I think we're in for an escalation here where Israel has had time to prepare. And there's been time for deliberations and talks with the U.S., and hopefully we will be on the same page. At the end of the day, I look at Israel as a frontier, a bastion of the West, fighting the forces of evil and fighting extremism in the Middle East, sometimes a bit ungratefully, and sometimes many countries around the world forget what Israel deals with, the kind of monsters that we face along our borders and further away. But I think that Israel will be steadfast and committed in defending itself, and hopefully Israel will have the support that it needs.
Well, the United States has been in lockstep with its support, but all along throughout the course of this past year, the message from the White House has been one of restraint. And just look at how much has transpired over the course of just the last several months following that initial attack by Iran, that unprecedented attack, where President Biden, after the majority of those projectiles had been thwarted, urged Prime Minister Netanyahu to take the win. We'll see how things unfold in this situation now, as you noted, very precarious, minute-by-minute developments. And of course, we'll be following it all for you. Jonathan Conricus.